You are talking to yourself again, freak. The voice cut through the peaceful moment like a blade, sharp and deliberate. Nessa Thornwood did not look up from where she knelt in the garden behind the pack house, her fingers gently touching the soft feathers of an injured sparrow. The small bird had broken its wing in a storm the night before, and she had been listening to its pain, to the fear that thrummed through its tiny body like a second heartbeat. "I am helping," Nessa said quietly, her voice steady even though her hands trembled slightly. She could feel the eyes on her back, could sense the contempt radiating from the group of young wolves who had followed her out here. They always followed her, always watched, always waited for another opportunity to remind her of what she was not. Helping? The laugh that followed was cruel and familiar. Cassandra Reed, daughter of the current alpha of Silvermoon Pack, stepped closer until her shadow fell across Nessa and the bird. "You are kneeling in the dirt talking to a bird. That is not helping. That is insanity." The sparrow chirped softly, and Nessa heard its small voice in her mind as clearly as if it spoke human words. "The bad wolf comes. The one who smells of rotting flowers. Make her go away." "The bird does not think so," Nessa replied, and immediately regretted it. The other wolves laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. There were 5 of them today. 5 perfect wolves with perfect transformations and perfect connections to their inner beasts. Everything Nessa was not. "Of course the bird agrees with you," Cassandra said, crouching down so she could look Nessa in the eyes. Her perfect face was twisted with disgust, her perfect blonde hair catching the morning sun. "Because you are absolutely insane. 23 years old and still no wolf. My grandmother transformed at 8, my mother at 7. Even the Omega pups in this pack manage their first shift by 15 at the latest. But you? Nothing. Just a pathetic human pretending to be one of us." Nessa felt the familiar burn of shame in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. She had learned years ago that showing emotion only made it worse. The sparrow rustled in her hands, and she felt its fear spike. The bird could sense her distress, could feel the predatory energy rolling off the wolves surrounding them. "She is right," a fox called from somewhere in the nearby trees. "You should leave this place. These wolves do not deserve you." But leaving was not an option. She had nowhere else to go. No other pack would take a wolf without a transformation. No human community would accept someone who heard animals speak. She was trapped here, had been trapped here since birth, subject to the mercy of a pack that had none. "Maybe she is not talking to the bird at all," one of the other wolves suggested. A boy named Marcus, who had tormented Nessa since childhood. "Maybe she is talking to the wolf she pretends to have. Thaikina, imaginary one that only exists in her delusional mind." More laughter. Always more laughter. Nessa carefully set the sparrow down on a soft patch of moss, whispering to it without words, sending feelings of safety and healing through the connection that seemed to exist between her and all living creatures. The bird understood. It nestled into the moss, its fear subsiding as warmth spread through the bond. "Go now, little sister," Nessa thought. "Rest and heal. I will check on you later." She stood, slowly, brushing dirt from her worn jeans. She was small compared to the others, barely 5'4", with wild dark hair that never seemed to stay in the braid she tried to tame it into. Her clothes were old, hand-me-downs from the pack donations, because she had no family to provide for her. Her parents had died in a rogue attack when she was 3, and the pack had raised her out of obligation, not love. She was a burden, a charity case, a wolfless embarrassment that reflected poorly on the entire Silvermoon Pack. "Are you done playing with your little friend?" Cassandra asked, standing as well. She was nearly 6 inches taller than Nessa, all long legs and aristocratic grace. Everything an alpha's daughter should be. "I need to prepare for the gathering," Nessa said quietly, trying to move past the group. But Marcus stepped into her path, blocking her. "Oh, that is right," he said, his grin widening. "The gathering of alphas starts today. Every important wolf from every important pack in the continent will be here, and you get to serve them drinks like the glorified human servant you are. Nessa's jaw tightened. The gathering happened once every 100 years. A sacred meeting of all alpha bloodlines to discuss territory, alliances, and the future of their kind. It was the most important event in the werewolf world, and Silvermoon Pack had been chosen to host it this century. For weeks, the pack had been preparing, transforming the grounds into a showcase of wealth and power. And Nessa, as the lowest member of the pack hierarchy, had been assigned to the serving staff. "At least I am useful," Nessa said, and tried again to move past Marcus. This time he grabbed her arm, his grip just tight enough to hurt without leaving a mark. He had practiced that grip over the years, knew exactly how much pressure to apply. "Useful?" Cassandra laughed again, that tinkling sound that reminded Nessa of breaking glass. "You are about as useful as a wolf without teeth. Actually, that would be more useful than you, because at least a wolf without teeth would still have a wolf." Something inside Nessa cracked then, just a little. She had endured years of this, had learned to keep her head down and her mouth shut, had accepted her place at the bottom of the hierarchy. But there was only so much a person could take before the walls they built around their heart started to crumble. "Let me go," Nessa said, her voice low. "Or what?" Marcus challenged, his eyes flashing with the gold that indicated his wolf was close to the surface. "You will sick your imaginary wolf on me? You will ask the birds to peck me to death? Please, Nessa. We both know you are powerless." She felt it then, a stirring deep inside her chest. Not her wolf, because she had long ago accepted that her wolf either did not exist or was so deeply buried that it might as well be dead. No, this was something else. Something that had always been there, but that she had never fully understood. A connection to the world around her that went deeper than words, deeper than thought. Every living thing within 100 yards suddenly turned its attention toward her. Birds stopped singing. Insects paused in their endless work. The fox in the trees went perfectly still. Even the grass beneath her feet seemed to lean toward her, as if waiting for a command. "I said, let me go," Nessa repeated, and this time her voice carried something that made Marcus's eyes widen. For just a moment, his grip loosened, and Nessa pulled free. She walked away quickly, her heart pounding, not understanding what had just happened but knowing she needed to get away before things escalated further. Behind her, she heard Cassandra's voice, sharp with irritation. "That freak is getting bolder. Someone needs to remind her of her place before the alphas arrive. Can you imagine the embarrassment if any of them see her acting like she matters?" Nessa kept walking, kept her head down, kept breathing. Just a few more hours. Just get through the day, get through the gathering, survive like you always have. But something had changed. She could feel it in the air, in the earth beneath her feet, in the way the animals around her had responded to her distress. Something was coming. Something that would change everything. She just did not know if that change would save her or destroy her. The pack house loomed ahead, massive and intimidating, filled with wolves preparing for the arrival of the most powerful alphas in the world, and somewhere among them would be him, the Alpha King, Demon Blackthorn. Even his name sent shivers through the pack. They spoke of him in whispers, in tones mixed with reverence and fear. The most powerful alpha in 5 generations. A warrior who had united the northern territories through a combination of strategic brilliance and overwhelming force. A leader whose wolf was so dominant that he could force entire packs into submission without a single word. He had never found his mate, and rumors said his wolf grew more unstable with each passing year, more violent, more unpredictable. Nessa had seen his picture in the pack records, had studied his face the way one might study a coming storm. Dark hair, darker eyes, a face carved from stone and shadow, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. He looked like the kind of man who could destroy you with a glance, who carried death in one hand and dominion in the other. And he was coming here. Today. She pushed through the servants' entrance at the back of the pack house, immediately enveloped by the chaos of preparation. Wolves rushed everywhere, carrying linens and flowers, polish and paint. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, spotted Nessa immediately and waved her over with barely contained anxiety. "There you are," Mrs. Chen said, her accent thick with the stress of the day. "We are behind schedule. The alphas begin arriving in 3 hours, and the main hall is not ready. I need you. To help with the table settings. Can you do that without causing problems?" Nessa nodded, swallowing the hurt that came with the casual assumption that she was a problem waiting to happen. "Yes, Mrs. Chen. I can do that." "Good. And Nessa." The older woman's voice softened just slightly. "Stay out of sight as much as possible during the actual gathering. Alpha Reed made it very clear that he does not want you visible when the other alphas are present. It reflects poorly on the pack to have a wolfless member serving at such an important event." Of course it did. Everything about Nessa reflected poorly on the pack. She was a walking reminder of failure, of weakness, of whatever genetic flaw had left her unable to access the wolf that should have been her birthright. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Nessa worked quickly and efficiently, setting tables with a precision born from years of practice. She arranged silver and crystal, folded napkins into complicated shapes, placed name cards at each seat with careful attention to pack hierarchy. The main hall was massive, with soaring ceilings and walls lined with portraits of past alphas. At the head of the room sat the high table, where the most powerful alphas would dine. She saw the name cards as she placed them. Alpha Reed of Silver Moon, Alpha Constantine of Iron Paw, Alpha Marissa of Shadowfin. And there, in the center position, of highest honor, the card that made her hands shake slightly as she set it down, Alpha King Demon Blackthorn of the United Northern Territories. She stared at the card for a moment too long, trying to imagine what it would be like to meet him. Would he look at her with the same contempt as the others? Would he even notice her at all? She was meant to be invisible, after all. A ghost moving through the halls, serving and cleaning and existing only to make the lives of real wolves easier. "Nessa." The sharp voice made her jump. She turned to find Cassandra striding into the hall, now dressed in a gown that probably cost more than Nessa would see in a year. The Alpha's daughter looked like royalty, every inch of her designed to attract the attention of powerful males. "Did you touch my place setting?" Cassandra demanded, moving to examine the table where her card sat, several seats down from the high table, but still in a position of prominence. "I set all the tables," Nessa confirmed, keeping her voice neutral. "Mrs. Chen assigned me to do so." "Well, you did it wrong." Cassandra picked up a fork and examined it as if searching for flaws. "This silver is not polished enough. I can see a spot right here. Do it again." Nessa looked at the fork. It was perfectly polished, gleaming under the lights of the hall. There was no spot. But contradicting Cassandra was pointless. "Yes, Cassandra," Nessa said quietly, reaching for the fork. But Cassandra did not hand it over. Instead, she held it up higher, just out of Nessa's reach, forcing her to stand on her toes and stretch for it. The other young wolves who had followed Cassandra into the hall laughed at the spectacle. Nessa felt heat creep up her neck, felt the familiar burn of humiliation. But she kept her expression blank. Do not react. Do not give them the satisfaction. Just survive. Finally, Cassandra dropped the fork. It clattered to the floor, bouncing under the table. "Oops," Cassandra said, her smile sharp as knives. "Better get that. Would not want the Alpha King to see dirty silverware on the floor." Nessa knelt and crawled under the table, her fingers closing around the fork. She could hear them above her, their laughter floating down like poison rain. This was her life. This had always been her life. And unless something changed, it always would be. She emerged from under the table, fork in hand, and nearly collided with Mrs. Chen, who looked more frazzled than ever. "They are here," Mrs. Chen hissed. "The first alphas are arriving. Everyone to your positions, now. The hall erupted into controlled chaos as servants rushed to finish final preparations. Cassandra and her friends disappeared to join their families in the greeting party. Nessa was herded with the other servants to the side of the hall, where they were meant to stand invisible and ready to serve at a moment's notice. She found her position near the back, grateful for the shadows. From here, she could see without. Being seen, could observe without drawing attention. The massive doors at the far end of the hall opened, and the alphas began to enter. They came in order of power and prestige, each one announced by a herald. They were magnificent, these rulers of the werewolf world, tall and powerful, moving with the predatory grace that came from a lifetime of dominance. Their eyes glowed with the gold of their wolves, marking them as the elite, the strongest, the chosen leaders of their kind. Alpha. Constantine entered with his mate, a woman nearly as intimidating as he was. Alpha Marissa came alone, her reputation as a warrior queen preceding her like a banner. Others followed, each one adding to the display of power and prestige. And then the herald's voice rang out, one final time, and the entire hall fell silent. Presenting His Majesty, Alpha King Demon Blackthorn, ruler of the United Northern Territories, uniter of the broken packs, keeper of the ancient laws. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Nessa felt it like a physical force, a pressure that made it hard to breathe. Every wolf in the hall instinctively bowed their heads, submitting to a power greater than their own. Even the alphas, proud and powerful as they were, lowered their eyes in respect. Nessa bowed her head as well, but she could not stop herself from looking up, from catching a glimpse of the man who commanded such absolute obedience. He was taller than she had expected. The pictures had not captured. The sheer presence of him. The way he seemed to fill the space around him with something that was not quite visible, but absolutely undeniable. He wore black, simple, and unadorned, which somehow made him more intimidating than if he had been covered in jewels and finery. His face was exactly as she had seen in the pictures, hard and beautiful, with eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But it was what walked beside him that made Nessa's breath catch in her throat. His wolf. She had heard the stories, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality. The wolf was massive, easily the size of a small horse, with fur so black it seemed to shimmer with blue undertones. Its eyes were the color of molten amber, and they radiated an intelligence that was almost frightening. Wolves did not usually maintain their transformation, except during pack runs or battles. To see an alpha's wolf walking beside its human form was unprecedented, a display of power that bordered on the supernatural. Demon Blackthorn moved through the hall like a king surveying his domain, his expression revealing nothing. His wolf moved with him, step for step, perfectly synchronized. They were terrifying. They were magnificent. They were everything Nessa would never be. Alpha Reed rushed forward, his own head bowed, his voice full of deference. Your Majesty, welcome to Silver Moon Pack. We are honored beyond measure to host the gathering. Please, allow me to show you to your quarters, so you can rest before the evening meal. But Demon did not respond. His wolf had stopped walking. The massive creature stood absolutely still in the center of the hall, its head raised, its nostrils flaring. Every wolf in the room tensed, sensing something wrong. Demon frowned, his hand moving to rest on his wolf's head. Shade, he said quietly, his voice deep and carrying easily through the silent hall. What is it? The wolf did not respond to its human. Instead, it began to move again. But not toward the quarters that had been prepared. It moved toward the side of the hall, toward the servants, toward Nessa. She felt her heart stop, felt the world narrow to the sight of that massive wolf walking directly toward her with purpose and intent. Every instinct she had, human and otherwise, screamed at her to run. But she was frozen, pinned in place by eyes that saw too much, knew too much. The other servants scattered, pressing themselves against the walls, leaving Nessa standing, alone as the Alpha King's wolf approached. She heard Demon's voice, sharp with command. Shade. Heal. Now. But the wolf did not obey. For the first time in the memory of anyone present, the Alpha King's wolf ignored a direct command. It kept coming, closing the distance between them with steady, measured steps. Gasps echoed through the hall. Wolves whispered in shock and confusion. This was impossible. The Alpha King's wolf was legendary for its obedience, for the iron control demon. Maintained over it even in the most chaotic situations. Nessa wanted to run, wanted to disappear, but her feet would not move, and the wolf was so close now she could see the individual hairs in its fur, could smell the scent of pine and earth, and something wild that made her head spin. The wolf stopped directly in front of her, so close she could feel the heat radiating from its massive body. She stared into those amber eyes and saw something that made no sense. Recognition. The wolf knew her. Somehow, impossibly, it knew her. And then, while the entire hall watched in stunned silence, the Alpha King's wolf did something it had never done for anyone except Demon himself. It lowered its massive head. It folded its legs. It lay down at Nessa's feet and placed its enormous head in her lap, a gesture of submission and adoration that defied everything anyone knew about this creature. Nessa felt tears spring to her eyes without permission. She felt the wolf's presence in her mind, not words exactly, but feelings, emotions, mine, safe, home, found you. The hall erupted into chaos. Voices shouted over one another. Wolves surged forward and then back, torn between shock and the instinct to protect their king. But through it all, Nessa heard only one voice, low and dangerous, and carrying a fury that made her blood freeze. "What?" said Demon Blackthorn, and every word was a barely leashed threat. "Have you done to my wolf?" Nessa looked up from the wolf in her lap, looked past the wall of fur and heat, and met the eyes of the Alpha King. They were blazing with gold, his wolf rising to the surface in response to whatever was happening. He looked like he wanted to rip her apart with his bare hands. He looked like she had stolen something precious. He looked like she had just become the most dangerous person in his world. And Nessa, who had spent her entire life invisible, suddenly found herself at the center of attention from the one man in the world she should have remained hidden from. The Alpha King's wolf rumbled contentedly in her lap, and Nessa realized with creeping horror that her life had just changed in ways she could not begin to understand. The question was whether she would survive those changes long enough to discover what they meant. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the chaos. Every eye in the grand hall fixed on Nessa, where she knelt with the Alpha King's wolf, sprawled across her lap like an overgrown puppy seeking affection. The weight of the creature was immense. Its head alone probably weighed more than her entire body, and yet it radiated such contentment that Nessa could feel it thrumming through the bond that had somehow formed between them. She had not created this bond, had not asked for it, but it was there, undeniable and growing stronger with each passing second. Demon Blackthorn moved toward her with deadly grace, his face a mask of controlled fury that did nothing to hide the rage burning in his eyes. Every wolf in his path scattered, pressing themselves against walls, submitting with everything they had. No one wanted to be between the Alpha King and whatever threat he perceived. And Nessa, apparently, was that threat. "I asked you a question," Demon said, his voice dropping to a register that made the windows rattle. "What have you done to my wolf?" Nessa opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her hands had somehow found their way to the wolf's fur, fingers tangling in the impossibly soft black coat without her conscious decision to touch it. The wolf, Shade, pressed closer to her, a low rumble of pleasure vibrating through its massive chest. Nessa tried again, forcing words past her terror. "I did nothing. I swear. I did not do anything. I do not know why your wolf—" "Lies." The word cracked like a whip. Demon was close enough now that she could see the gold bleeding into his eyes, could see the tension in every line of his body as he fought to maintain control. "Shade has never done this, never ignored my command, never approached anyone without my explicit permission. and yet he comes to you like a tamed dog seeking treats. So I ask again, and I will not ask a third time. What did you do?" Alpha Reed pushed through the crowd, his face pale with fear and anger. "Your Majesty, I deeply apologize for this disruption. This girl she is an aberration in our pack. Wolfless, defective. She must have used some kind of magic or trickery to manipulate your companion. I assure you, she will be severely punished for this insult to your person." Magic? Trickery? Nessa wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but the sound died in her throat as Demon's eyes snapped to Alpha Reed with such intensity that the other man physically stumbled backward. "You will be silent," Demon commanded. And it was not a request. The Alpha of Silver Moon Pack, a man who ruled over hundreds of wolves, a man who had never bowed to anyone except the king himself, snapped his mouth shut like a chastened child. Demon's attention returned to Nessa, and she felt like she was being dissected by that stare, examined and analyzed and judged. "Stand up," he ordered. Nessa tried to obey, but Shade had other ideas. The massive wolf made a sound that could only be described as a whine of protest, pressing even harder against her as if to prevent her from moving. "Shade." Demon's voice sharpened. "Let her stand." For a moment, the wolf did not move. Then, slowly and with obvious reluctance, Shade lifted its head from Nessa's lap and shifted backward just enough to allow her room to stand. But the wolf did not leave her side, did not return to its human. Instead, it positioned itself between Nessa and Demon, as if protecting her from him. The hall erupted into fresh whispers. This was beyond unprecedented. This was impossible. A wolf protecting someone from its own human was a violation of everything they understood about the bond between human and wolf. Nessa stood on shaking legs, her hands falling to her sides. She was covered in black fur, her worn clothes making her look even more out of place among the finely dressed pack members. She felt Demon's gaze travel over her, cataloging every detail, every flaw, every sign of her low status. "What is your name?" he asked, his tone still dangerous, but with an edge of something else now. Curiosity, perhaps, or calculation. "Nessa," she whispered. "Nessa Thornwood. And you are wolfless." It was not a question. He could sense it, or perhaps he simply believed what Alpha Reed had said. Either way, there was no point in denying it. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Interesting." Demon tilted his head slightly, studying her the way a predator might study unusual prey. "Tell me, Nessa Thornwood, do you have any explanation for why my wolf, who has never submitted to anyone except me, who has been trained since birth to obey only my commands, who represents half my soul, has decided you are more important than following my direct orders?" The question was a trap. Any answer she gave would be wrong. If she said yes, she admitted to manipulating his wolf somehow. If she said no, she looked like she was lying or hiding something. Either way, she was condemned. The fox's voice came to her then, speaking in her mind with the clarity that only she could hear. "Tell him the truth, little sister. The dangerous ones sometimes respect honesty more than cleverness." Nessa took a breath and met the Alpha. King's eyes, knowing it was foolish, knowing she should look down in submission, but unable to do anything else in this moment. "I speak to animals," she said simply. "I always have. Birds, foxes, deer, horses. They speak to me and I speak to them. Not with words exactly, but with feelings and images and understanding. I thought I was broken because I have no wolf. But maybe I am just different. Maybe whatever I have instead of a wolf allows me to connect with creatures in a way other wolves cannot." "Your wolf?" She paused, searching for the right words. "Your wolf feels like pack to me, like family. I did not create that feeling. I swear I did not. But I recognize it." The silence that followed her confession was absolute. Wolves stared at her like she had grown a second head. Some looked afraid, others looked disgusted. Cassandra's voice cut through the quiet, sharp with mockery. "She is insane, Your Majesty. She has always been insane. She talks to birds and claims they talk back. She spends more time with animals than with the pack. We have tolerated her only because we are merciful, but this display proves she is dangerous. She should be removed from the pack immediately. No one asked for your opinion, child, Demon said, without even looking at Cassandra. His eyes never left Nessa's face. A beast speaker, he said quietly, almost to himself. I thought the bloodline died out 300 years ago. Nessa blinked. A what? Beast speaker. Demon took a step. Closer, and Shade shifted to keep its body between them, drawing a low growl of frustration from the Alpha King. An ancient bloodline that could communicate with all creatures, not just their own wolves. They were revered as shamans and guides, able to speak with nature itself. They were also incredibly rare, appearing perhaps once every few generations. The last confirmed beast speaker died during the Great War of Territories, and most assumed the gift died with her. He paused, his expression unreadable. Apparently we were wrong. I do not understand, Nessa said, her mind reeling. If this is a real gift, if it is a bloodline ability, why do I not have a wolf? Why can I not transform like everyone else? Because you do not need to. The answer came from an unexpected source. An elderly woman pushed through the crowd, her hair silver with age but her posture straight and strong. Nessa recognized her as Elder Moira, one of the oldest living wolves and a keeper of pack histories. If she is truly a beast speaker, she does not need a wolf of her own. Her gift allows her to connect with all wolves, all creatures. A personal wolf would limit that connection, narrow her focus to one animal instead of all of nature. Elder Moira's eyes fixed on Nessa with something like wonder. Child, do you know who your parents were? Nessa shook her head. They died when I was 3. A rogue attack. I do not remember them. And no one thought to check her lineage? Elder Moira's voice, sharp with accusation as she turned to Alpha Reed. No one thought it strange that a child would survive a rogue attack that killed 2 adult wolves. No one questioned why she did not manifest a wolf. Alpha Reed's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. She was orphaned and traumatized. We assumed the trauma blocked her transformation. It happens sometimes. It does not happen, Elder Moira countered. And if you had bothered to check the old records instead of simply labeling her defective, you would have discovered that her mother was Elena Thornwood, last descendant of the Thornwood line, which traces directly back to Arya the Wise, the most powerful beast speaker in recorded history. The revelation hit Nessa like a physical blow. Her mother had been special? Had carried this bloodline? Why had no one ever told her? Why had she spent her entire life believing she was broken? This changes nothing, Cassandra protested, her voice rising with frustration. Even if she has some ancient bloodline, that does not explain why the Alpha King's wolf is acting like she owns it. That does not give her the right to manipulate His Majesty's companion. I did not manipulate anything, Nessa said, finding her voice again. The weight of the revelations was crushing, but beneath it she felt something else stirring. Anger. All these years of abuse, of mockery, of being treated as less than nothing, and they had known. Someone must have known about her mother's bloodline. Someone had chosen to keep it hidden, chosen to let her suffer. Your wolf came to me. I did not call it. I did not summon it. I was standing here trying to be invisible like I always do, and it chose to approach me. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. Demon had been silent during the exchange between Elder Moira and Alpha Reed, but now he raised a hand, and everyone immediately quieted. Shade, he said, his voice firm but lacking the edge of anger. It had held before. Come here. The wolf turned its massive head to look at its human, and Nessa felt the conflict radiating from the creature. Loyalty to Demon warred with whatever instinct had driven it to her. The bond between human and wolf was supposed to be absolute, unbreakable. For Shade to hesitate even for a moment was evidence of how powerful this new connection was. Please, Nessa whispered, speaking directly to the wolf through the strange link that existed between them. Go to him. He is your other half. You belong to him. The wolf made a low sound of distress, but slowly, reluctantly, it moved away from Nessa and returned to Demon's side. The Alpha King immediately placed his hand on Shade's head, and Nessa saw some of the tension leave his shoulders. Whatever connection existed between them, it was still there, still strong. She had not broken it. This situation, Demon said carefully, each word measured and precise, is unprecedented. I need time to understand what has happened here and what it means. The gathering will proceed as planned. This matter will be discussed privately once I have had time to consult with my advisors and study the historical records. He paused, his eyes finding Nessa's once more. You will come to my quarters in 1 hour. We will speak about your gift and about what happened here. Do you understand? Nessa nodded, not trusting her voice. Good. Alpha Reed, show me to my rooms. The rest of you, return to your preparations. The gathering begins at sunset, and I expect everything to be perfect despite this disruption. The crowd slowly dispersed, wolves moving with obvious reluctance, clearly disappointed to miss whatever confrontation they had been anticipating. Cassandra shot Nessa a look of pure venom as she passed, and Nessa knew without doubt that this was far from over. Whatever protection Elder Moira's revelation might have offered was temporary at best. Demon moved toward the exit with Shade at his side. But the wolf kept turning back to look at Nessa, its amber eyes full of longing and confusion. Nessa felt the pull too, felt something inside her reaching toward the wolf, wanting to follow, wanting to understand this connection that had formed without her permission or understanding. As the Alpha King disappeared through the doorway, Elder Moira approached Nessa, her weathered face kind but serious. Child, you need to understand something. What happened here today will change your life in ways you cannot imagine. The Alpha King is the most powerful wolf alive, and his wolf choosing to acknowledge you, to submit to you even for a moment, means something significant. There will be those who see you as a threat now. There will be those who want to use you, and there will be those who want to eliminate you before you become too powerful. I am not powerful, Nessa protested. I cannot even transform. You are a beast speaker, Elder Moira corrected gently. That makes you one of the rarest and most valuable wolves in existence. Your power is different from ours, but it is no less real. The fact that the Alpha King's wolf recognized that power, responded to it, suggests a bond that goes beyond simple recognition. You need to be very careful, child. Very careful indeed. The old woman pressed something into Nessa's hand, a small leather pouch that smelled of herbs and earth. Wear this around your neck. It will help shield your thoughts and emotions from wolves who might try to sense them. And when you meet with the Alpha King, be honest. He values truth above all else, even when that truth is uncomfortable. Elder Moira left then, and Nessa was alone in the grand hall, staring at the pouch in her hand and trying to process everything that had just happened. An hour. She had 1 hour before she had to face the Alpha King again. 1 hour to prepare for a conversation that could determine the course of her entire future. She thought about running, about leaving the pack grounds and disappearing into the wilderness where wolves could not find her. But where would she go? She had no skills beyond serving and cleaning, no money, no connections beyond the animals she could speak with. And more than that, something inside her did not want to run. Despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, part of her wanted to understand what had happened between her and Shade, wanted to explore this connection that felt so right, even though it made no sense. A crow landed on the windowsill nearby, its black eyes bright with intelligence. You are thinking of running, it said in her mind, its voice amused. But you will not. You are finally being seen, little speaker. After all these years of hiding, someone finally sees you. That is terrifying, but it is also what you have always wanted. I wanted to belong, Nessa whispered back. That is different from being seen. Is it? The crow tilted its head. To belong, you must first be seen. To be accepted, you must first be. The dangerous Wolf King sees you now. The question is whether you will let him truly know you. Before Nessa could respond, Mrs. Chen appeared, looking harried and anxious. There you are. Come, come. You cannot meet the Alpha King looking like that. You are covered in wolf fur and garden dirt. Let me help you clean up. Mrs. Chen led her through the servant passages to a small room with a basin of warm water and a clean set of clothes. Nothing fancy, but better than what Nessa usually wore. As the older woman helped her wash and change, she spoke in low, urgent tones. I do not know what happened out there, and I do not pretend to understand it. But I do know this. The Alpha King is not a man who tolerates deception or manipulation. If you have done something to his wolf, if you have used some kind of trick or magic, you need to confess it now before things get worse. I did not do anything, Nessa said, frustration seeping into her voice. Why does everyone assume I must? Have done something wrong? Why can it not simply be that his wolf recognized something in me? Mrs. Chen paused in her work, her hands gentle as she combed through Nessa's hair. Because, child, in our world, power seeks power. The Alpha King's wolf is the most dominant creature alive. For it to submit to you, even partially, means you have power. And power in someone as low-ranked as you, someone who has been invisible for so long, is frightening to those who have always been on top. She finished with Nessa's hair, pulling it back into a neat braid. There, you look presentable. Remember, be respectful. Answer his questions honestly. And whatever you do not look him directly in the eyes unless he gives you permission. He may be curious about you now, but he is still the Alpha King. One wrong move and curiosity can turn to anger very quickly. Nessa nodded, though part of her rebelled at the idea of submitting to anyone anymore. She had spent her whole life making herself small, invisible, unthreatening. And where had it gotten her? Mocked and abused and treated as less than nothing. Maybe it was time to stop apologizing for existing. Mrs. Chen escorted her through the pack house to the wing that had been prepared for the Alpha King. Guards stood at attention outside the massive doors, their eyes tracking Nessa with suspicion and hostility. One of them, a large male with scars crossing his face, looked at Mrs. Chen. This is the wolfless girl? This is Nessa. Thornwood, Mrs. Chen confirmed. The Alpha King requested her presence. The guard's lip curled with disdain. The king is inside with his beta. You will wait here until he is ready for you. They were made to stand in the hallway for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 minutes. Nessa could hear voices from inside the room, too muffled to make out words but carrying the tone of serious discussion. Finally, the door opened, and a man emerged. He was nearly as tall as Demon, but leaner, with brown hair and sharp green eyes that assessed Nessa in a single glance. I am Beta Marcus Ironwood, he said, his voice neutral. The Alpha King will see you now. I will be present during this meeting as witness and counsel. Do you understand? Yes, Beta Ironwood, Nessa replied, pleased that her voice remained steady. He stood aside to let her enter, and Nessa stepped into the room beyond. It was a suite fit for royalty, with expensive furniture and tapestries depicting great battles from werewolf history. But Nessa barely noticed the decor, because her attention was immediately captured by the man standing near the window. Demon had removed his formal jacket and stood in only a black shirt that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less. Shade lay on a rug near the fireplace, the wolf's amber eyes tracking Nessa's every movement. The moment she entered, Shade's head came up and its tail began to wag, a gesture so incongruous in such a fearsome creature that it might have been funny under different circumstances. Sit, Demon commanded, gesturing to a chair positioned in the center of the room. It was positioned so that she would be facing both him and Beta Marcus, so that light from the window would illuminate her while they remained partially shadowed. An interrogation setup. Nessa sat, keeping her spine straight and her hands folded in her lap. She had decided during the walk here that she would not apologize anymore, would not act ashamed. of something she had not done. Elder Moira has provided me with the historical records regarding beast speakers, Demon began, pacing slowly in front of the window. The accounts are fragmentary and often contradictory, but certain facts are consistent. Beast speakers could communicate with all creatures, not just wolves. They served as mediators between packs and nature, ensuring balance and understanding. They were also highly sought after as mates by powerful alphas because their ability to communicate with wolves made them invaluable in managing large packs and territories. He stopped pacing and turned to face her directly. What is also consistent in these accounts is that beast speakers had an almost supernatural ability to calm and influence wolves, not through dominance or force, but through understanding and connection. A powerful beast speaker could theoretically influence even an alpha's wolf if the connection was strong enough. Are you suggesting I am influencing your wolf? Nessa asked, meeting his eyes despite Mrs. Chen's warning. I am stating facts, Demon replied. What I am asking is whether you are aware of any ability you might have to influence or control wolves beyond simple communication. No, Nessa said firmly. I can speak with animals. I can understand their feelings and thoughts. But I have never controlled them. I have never made them do anything against their will. I would not even know how to begin attempting such a thing. Beta Marcus stepped forward, his expression skeptical. Your Majesty, with respect, we only have her word on this. She could be lying to protect herself. We should test her, verify her claims before we decide how to proceed. Test me how? Nessa asked, turning to look at the beta. There are wolves in the pack who would volunteer to let you attempt to influence them, Marcus explained. If you truly cannot control wolves, the test will prove it. If you can, we will know the extent of your abilities. Was a reasonable request, Nessa supposed, but something about it made her uneasy. And if I refuse this test? Then we assume you have something to hide, Marcus said bluntly. Demon raised a hand, stopping his beta from saying more. The test is premature. Before we determine what she can do, we need to understand what happened with Shade. That is the immediate concern. He moved closer to Nessa, close enough that she could smell him, a scent of pine and winter air, and something uniquely his. That made her head swim. I am going to ask you a series of questions, and I expect complete honesty. Do you understand? Yes, Your Majesty. Good. First question. When Shade approached you, what did you feel? Nessa thought back to that moment, trying to put sensations into words. Recognition. Like seeing someone I had known in another life. Warmth. Safety. A sense of rightness. Like pieces of a puzzle fitting together. Did you feel any desire to command or control my wolf? No. Like I felt like Shade was family. Like pack. I wanted to comfort it, to understand why it was approaching me, but I had no desire to control it. When I commanded Shade to return to me, you told my wolf to obey. Why? The question surprised her. Because Shade belongs to you. The bond between you and your wolf is sacred. I would never try to come between that. I know what it is like to not have a wolf, to feel incomplete. I would never wish that pain on anyone, especially not by stealing their wolf away. Something flickered in Demon's dark eyes, some emotion Nessa could not identify. And yet Shade hesitated. Shade has never hesitated to obey me before, not once in 15 years. What does that tell you? That whatever connection formed between us is powerful, Nessa admitted, but not more powerful than your bond. Shade returned to you. That proves where the wolf's true loyalty lies. Or it proves that you are skilled enough to make it seem like Shade returned willingly when in fact you released control. Beta Marcus interjected. We still have no proof that you are not manipulating the situation. Nessa felt her temper flare, the anger that had been building all day finally finding a target. I have no reason to manipulate anyone. I am the lowest ranked wolf in this pack. I own nothing. I have no power. I have no connections. What possible benefit would I gain from manipulating the Alpha King's wolf? All I have done is exist, and apparently even that is too much for people to accept without assuming the worst of me. The words came out sharper than she intended, but she could not bring herself to regret them. She was tired of being accused, tired of defending her existence, tired of apologizing for being different. Demon's eyebrows rose slightly, and she realized with horror that she had just snapped at the Alpha King, that she had raised her voice to the most powerful wolf alive, that she had probably just signed her own death warrant. But instead of the anger she expected, Demon smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but genuine. "You have spirit," he said. "I appreciate that. Too many wolves cower and grovel. It grows tiresome. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on." He returned to his pacing, and Nessa released a breath she had not known she was holding. "Here is what I have decided," Demon announced. "The situation is too complex to resolve immediately. Beast speakers are too rare and too valuable to make hasty judgments about. Therefore, you will remain under my direct observation for the duration of the gathering. You will attend the official functions as part of my personal staff, rather than the general serving staff. This will allow me to watch how you interact with Shade and to determine whether there is truly a natural bond, or whether you are exerting influence." "Your Majesty," Beta Marcus protested. "Having her so close could be dangerous if she is manipulating Shade." "Then we will discover that quickly, will we not?" Demon replied. "Besides, if she truly is a beast speaker, having her close might prove useful. These gatherings always involve delicate negotiations. Having someone who can read the emotions and intentions of others through their wolves could be advantageous." He turned back to Nessa. "You will be given quarters near mine. You will dress appropriately for formal functions. You will comport yourself with dignity and respect. In return, I will ensure you are treated according to your bloodline rather than your pack status. Do you accept these terms?" Nessa's mind reeled. He was offering her protection, status, proximity to power. All things she had never dared to dream of. But at what cost? "What happens after the gathering?" she asked. "When you return to your territories, and I return to my place here?" "That depends entirely on what we discover during the gathering," Demon said. "If you prove to be what I suspect." "You are? If you truly are a legitimate beast speaker with no intention of manipulating or controlling others, then you will be offered a choice. You can remain here with Silvermoon Pack, though I will require Alpha Reed to treat you according to your bloodline status. Or you can come with me to the Northern Territories, where your gifts would be valued and protected." The offer hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. To leave Silvermoon Pack, to escape the years of mockery and abuse, to go somewhere she might actually belong. It was everything she had dreamed of and terrifying in equal measure. "I accept your terms," Nessa said quietly. "Good." Demon moved to a rope pull near the door and tugged it. Moments later, a female wolf entered, tall and elegant with honey-colored hair. "This is Lady Helena," Demon introduced. "She is my head of household staff. Helena, this is Nessa Thornwood, the beast speaker. She is to be given quarters in the guest wing, provided with appropriate clothing for formal occasions, and treated as an honored guest. Anyone who disrespects her answers to me directly. Is that clear?" Lady Helena's eyes widened slightly, but she controlled her surprise quickly. "Perfectly clear, Your Majesty. Miss Thornwood, if you will follow me, I will show you to your quarters and see to your needs." Nessa stood, her legs unsteady beneath her. As she moved toward the door, Shade suddenly rose from the rug and padded over to her, pressing its massive head against her side in a gesture of affection. She could not stop herself from running her fingers through the wolf's fur one more time, marveling at the connection she felt. "Shade." Demon's voice was firm, and reluctantly the wolf returned to its human side. But the amber eyes never left Nessa, and she felt the pull of that connection, even as she walked out of the room. As Lady Helena led her through the corridors, chatting pleasantly about the evening's schedule, Nessa's mind spun with everything that had happened. In the span of a few hours, her entire world had turned upside down. She had gone from invisible servant to recognized bloodline, From mockery to protection. From worthless to valuable. But she was not naive enough to believe this was the end of her troubles. Cassandra would see her elevation as a threat and an insult. Alpha Reed would resent having to treat her with respect. And somewhere in the pack were others who would see her new status as an opportunity to use or manipulate her for their own ends. The quarters Lady Helena showed her to were beyond anything Nessa had ever experienced. A large bedroom with an actual bed instead of the cot she was used to. A private bathroom with hot water. A closet being filled with gowns and formal wear in her size, though how they had gotten her measurements so quickly she had no idea. The first function is in 3 hours, Lady Helena explained. The welcome feast, where all the alphas will be formally introduced, and treaties will be discussed. You will sit at the high table, 2 seats to the left of His Majesty. I will return in 2 hours to help you dress and prepare. After Lady Helena left, Nessa sank onto the bed and buried her face in her hands. 2 seats from the Alpha King, at the high table, where everyone could see her, where Cassandra and her cronies would watch with hatred, where powerful alphas would wonder who she was and what she had done to earn such a position. A soft tapping at the window made her look up. A raven sat on the sill, its black eyes bright with intelligence. "May I enter, Speaker?" it asked in her mind. "The forest creatures wish to know if you are well. They felt your distress earlier." "I am well," Nessa assured it, moving to open the window. "Or I will be. Everything has changed very suddenly." "Change is the nature of life," the raven observed, hopping into the room and examining the luxurious surroundings with interest. "The Wolf King protects you now. That is good. But the pack wolves are angry. That is dangerous. You must be careful, young speaker. Your power is awakening, but it is not yet strong enough to protect you from those who would do you harm." "What do you mean my power is awakening?" Nessa asked, but the raven had already taken flight, disappearing into the darkening sky outside her window, with a call that sounded almost like laughter. Nessa closed the window and leaned against it, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. In a few hours, she would walk into that hall wearing a fine gown, sit at the high table, be visible in a way she had never been before. The question was whether visibility would finally give her the belonging she craved, or whether it would simply make her a bigger target for those who wanted her gone. She thought of Shade's amber eyes, of the warmth of that connection, of the way Demon had looked at her with something that might have been respect. Maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to finally understand what she was meant to be, to discover if there was more to her existence than serving and surviving, to find out if a beast speaker could truly belong in a world of wolves. The sun set, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, and Nessa prepared herself for the performance of a lifetime. Tonight, she would walk into a room full of the most powerful wolves in the world and pretend she belonged there. Tonight, she would sit beside a king and act like it was her right. Tonight, she would be visible, whether she was ready or not. And somewhere in the depths of the pack house, she knew Cassandra was preparing too, sharpening her claws and planning her revenge. The gathering was about to begin, and Nessa had a feeling the real battles would not be fought in negotiation rooms, but in the shadows and whispers where reputations were destroyed and lives were ruined. She just hoped she would survive long enough to discover the truth about what she was and what she could become. When Lady Helena returned 2 hours later, she brought with her a team of attendants who transformed Nessa into someone she barely recognized. The gown they dressed her in was midnight blue, simple in design, but clearly expensive, cut to flatter her small frame without being ostentatious. They left her hair down, unusual for formal events, but the dark waves cascading over her shoulders somehow made her look more exotic than unkempt. Subtle cosmetics enhanced her features without hiding them. And when they finally allowed her to look in the mirror, Nessa saw a stranger staring back. She looked like she belonged at a high table, like she had the right to sit among alphas, like she was more than the invisible servant they had all dismissed. "You look lovely," Lady Helena said with genuine warmth. "The Alpha King has excellent instincts. You will make quite an impression tonight. That is what I am afraid of, Nessa admitted. Lady Helena smiled knowingly. Fear is natural. But remember, you have done nothing wrong. You are there by royal command, under royal protection. Let anyone who has a problem with that take it up with His Majesty. The feast was being held in the largest hall Nessa had ever seen, clearly built specifically for events like the gathering. Long tables stretched the length of the room, each one covered in white linens and set with silver and crystal. The high table sat on a raised dais at the far end, positioned so that those seated there could observe the entire gathering. Wolves were already filing in as Lady Helena led Nessa through a side entrance, and the whispers started immediately. Nessa felt hundreds of eyes turned toward her, felt the weight of judgment and curiosity and hostility. She kept her head high, kept her steps measured and confident, even though her heart was trying to beat its way out of her chest. Presenting Miss Nessa Thornwood, honored guest of His Majesty Alpha King Demon Blackthorn, a herald announced as they approached the high table, and the whispers grew to a dull roar. Nessa saw Cassandra at one of the lower tables, her face twisted with such rage that for a moment Nessa thought the other woman might actually attack her right there in front of everyone. Alpha Reed looked like he had swallowed something bitter, his jaw clenched so tightly Nessa wondered if his teeth might crack. But she also saw Elder Moira, the old woman smiling with approval, and a few others whose expressions showed curiosity, rather than hostility. Lady Helena guided her to her assigned seat, 2 chairs to the left of the throne-like seat that would hold the Alpha King. Beta Marcus was already seated to the right of the throne, and he nodded to Nessa with grudging respect. You clean up well, he said quietly. Let us hope you can also behave appropriately during the feast. I have been serving at formal functions for years, Nessa replied. I know which fork to use. A hint of amusement crossed the Beta's face. Good, because at least 3 alphas at this gathering would love an excuse to declare you unworthy of your position. Do not give them that excuse. Before Nessa could respond, the herald's voice rang out again. Presenting His Majesty, Alpha King Demon Blackthorn, ruler of the United Northern Territories. Every wolf in the hall stood and bowed their heads as Demon entered. He had changed into formal attire, black and silver that somehow made him look even more imposing than before. Shade walked at his side as always, the massive wolf's presence a reminder of the power Demon commanded. They approached the high table together, and Nessa's breath caught as Shade's amber eyes found hers immediately. The wolf made a small sound of pleasure, its tail moving in what could only be described as a wag. Demon noticed, of course. Nothing escaped his attention. He glanced at Nessa, something unreadable in his expression, before taking his seat. The moment he sat, everyone else was permitted to sit as well, and the hall filled with the sound of chairs scraping and fabric rustling. Honored alphas, Demon began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. We gather tonight to celebrate a tradition that has sustained our kind for thousands of years. The gathering of alphas represents our commitment to unity, to diplomacy, to the strength we find in cooperation rather than constant conflict. Over the next 7 days, we will discuss territories, resolve disputes, and forge alliances that will guide our packs for the next century. But tonight, we feast, we celebrate. We remember that before we are rivals or allies, we are wolves. We are pack. We are family. It was a good speech, striking the right balance between formality and warmth. Wolves throughout the hall raised their glasses in toast, and servants began bringing out the first course of what would be an elaborate meal. As the feast progressed, Nessa found herself hyper-aware of every movement, every word. She ate carefully, spoke only when spoken to, and tried to ignore the stares that continued to come her way. Alphas from various packs kept glancing at her, clearly wondering who she was and why she merited a seat at the high table. You are doing well, Demon said quietly during a lull in conversation. Relax. You look like you expect someone to attack you at any moment. That is because I do expect someone to attack me, Nessa replied honestly. Perhaps not physically, but with words, with accusations, with attempts to undermine my position here. Let them try, Demon said, and there was something dark and dangerous in his tone. Anyone who challenges you challenges me. I do not take such challenges lightly. As if summoned by those words, Alpha Reed rose from his seat at a lower table and approached the high table, bowing deeply. Your Majesty, might I have a word? Speak, Demon commanded. Alpha Reed's eyes flickered to Nessa with barely concealed resentment before returning. To Demon. Your Majesty, I feel I must apologize for the earlier disruption involving Miss Thornwood. Had I known of her bloodline, I would have ensured she was treated appropriately from the beginning. However, I hope you understand that her behavior over the years has been unusual. She has spent more time with animals than with the pack, has shirked her responsibilities on numerous occasions, and has shown a concerning lack of respect for pack hierarchy. Is that so? Demon's voice was dangerously soft. Tell me, Alpha Reed, when you learned that an orphaned child in your pack might carry the bloodline of beast speakers, one of the rarest and most valuable gifts among our kind, what steps did you take to verify that bloodline? What efforts did you make to train and develop her potential gifts? Alpha Reed's face paled. We did not know for certain. You did not bother to find out, Demon corrected. You saw a child without a wolf and decided she was defective. You allowed her to be treated as a servant, as less than nothing, for over 20 years. You permitted your pack members to mock and abuse someone who could have been a tremendous asset to your territory. Do not stand before me now and criticize her behavior when you are the one who failed in your duty as alpha to every member of your pack. The hall had gone deathly quiet. Every wolf present could hear the rebuke, could see Alpha Reed being dressed down by the king himself. It was a humiliation. Reed would not forget or forgive. I understand, Your Majesty, Reed said stiffly. It was an oversight I deeply regret. With your permission, I would like to make amends by formally recognizing Miss Thornwood's bloodline and elevating her status within Silvermoon Pack. That will not be necessary, Demon said coldly. Miss Thornwood's status is not yours to determine. She is under my direct protection now, and decisions about her future will be made by me, in consultation with her. Not by you, not by anyone else. Am I clear? Perfectly clear, Your Majesty. Alpha Reed bowed again and retreated to his table, his humiliation complete. Nessa sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. The Alpha King had publicly defended her, had openly declared her under his protection, had made it clear that anyone who wanted to harm her would have to go through him first. You did not have to do that, Nessa whispered. Yes, I did, Demon replied. Weak alphas like Reed are part of why our kind struggles. They care more about appearances and traditions than about recognizing value and potential. If we are to survive the challenges ahead, we need to be better than that. Before Nessa could respond, another alpha approached the high table. This one was female, tall and elegant with silver streaking through her black hair. Your Majesty, she said, her voice respectful but curious. I am Alpha Marisa of Shadowfen Pack. Forgive my boldness, but I must admit to intense curiosity about your young companion. Beast speakers are legend in my territory. We have stories of one who lived among us 3 centuries ago, who helped broker peace between our pack and the bear clans of the northern mountains. If Miss Thornwood truly carries that gift, I would be honored to hear of her experiences. It was said politely, but Nessa could sense the test in it. Alpha Marissa was giving her an opportunity to prove herself, to demonstrate that she deserved her place at this table. Nessa took a breath and met the Alpha's eyes, remembering Elder Moira's advice about honesty. I have only recently learned that my abilities have a name, Alpha Marissa. For most of my life I believed I was simply broken, unable to transform like other wolves. But yes, I can communicate with animals. Birds tell me of dangers they have seen. Foxes share news of the forest. Even insects will sometimes warn me of threats I cannot see. The connection is not something I control consciously. It simply exists, like breathing. Fascinating. Alpha Marissa said, genuine interest in her voice. And you can communicate with all creatures, not just warm-blooded animals? I believe so, though I have not tested the full extent of the gift. I once helped a spider colony relocate from the packhouse kitchens by explaining to them that the cooks would kill them if they stayed. They understood and moved to the gardens instead. A few wolves nearby chuckled at that, and Nessa saw some of the tension in the room ease slightly. Alpha Marissa smiled. A practical application. I like that. Tell me, have you considered what you might do with such a gift if given the proper resources and training? It was a loaded question. Nessa glanced at Demon, who nodded slightly, giving her permission to answer freely. I have not had time to consider it, Nessa admitted. But if I could choose, I would like to help bridge the gap between wolves and other creatures. We share territories with so many species, yet we rarely communicate with them. We encroach on their lands without understanding. We hunt without knowing if we are disrupting important migrations or breeding grounds. A beast speaker could serve as a mediator, ensuring that all creatures can coexist more peacefully. A noble goal, Alpha Marissa approved. If you ever find yourself in need of a territory that values such work, Shadowfen would welcome you. It was an offer, Nessa realized. A powerful alpha was offering her a place in her pack, publicly, where everyone could hear. It was also a subtle challenge to Demon, a way of testing how seriously he meant his protection. I appreciate the offer, Alpha Marissa, Nessa said carefully. But for now, I am committed to understanding my gifts better before making decisions about where I might use them. Wisely said, Alpha Marissa replied, inclining her head before returning to her seat. The rest of the feast passed in a blur of introductions and careful conversations. Several other alphas approached to speak with Nessa, some out of genuine curiosity, others clearly testing to see if she deserved her position. Through it all, Demon remained a steady presence at her side, occasionally interjecting when conversations grew too aggressive, but mostly allowing her to navigate the social waters herself. Shade remained close as well, the massive wolf lying at Demon's feet, but with its head turned toward Nessa, as if keeping watch over her. She could feel the connection between them, that inexplicable bond that had formed the moment their eyes met. It was not romantic or possessive, not like the mate bonds she had read about in old stories. This was something purer, simpler, a recognition of kinship, of understanding, as if Shade could sense something in her that even she did not fully understand yet. Finally, as the feast wound down and wolves began to disperse to various reception rooms for more informal socializing, Demon stood and offered Nessa his hand. "Walk with me," he said. It was not a request. Nessa took his hand, feeling calluses and strength, and allowed him to lead her out of the hall through a side exit. Shade followed, of course, the wolf's presence a constant reminder of the strangeness of this entire situation. They walked through the gardens behind the pack house, the moon rising full and bright overhead. The night air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of flowers and earth. "You handled yourself well." "Tonight," Demon said after a few minutes of silence. "Better than I expected for someone who has never been trained in pack politics." "I have spent years observing," Nessa replied. "When you are invisible, you see things others miss. You learn how power flows, how alliances form and break. I may not have participated, but I have always been paying attention." "That makes you dangerous," Demon observed. "Knowledge is often more powerful than strength. Is that why you are keeping me close?" Nessa asked. "Because you think I am dangerous? I am keeping you close because my wolf has decided you are important, and I have learned to trust Shade's instincts even when I do not understand them." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "But I will not pretend I am not also intrigued by what you represent. A beast speaker could change the balance of power in this world. Your ability to communicate with all creatures, to potentially influence them, makes you incredibly valuable. There will be alphas who want to use you, others who will want to eliminate you before you become a threat. I need to determine which category I fall into, The honesty was startling. Most powerful wolves would have hidden their motivations behind pretty words and false assurances. But Demon laid his cards on the table, making it clear that he had not decided if she was an asset or a threat. "I appreciate your honesty," Nessa said. "So let me be equally honest. I have no desire to be used as a political tool. I have spent my entire life being treated as an object, a burden, something to be managed and controlled. If you are planning to do the same thing, just with better accommodations and nicer clothes, then I would rather you tell me now so I can decide whether staying under your protection is worth the price." Demon's eyes narrowed, but she saw approval there too. "And what would you do if you decided it was not worth the price?" "Leave," Nessa said simply. "Go somewhere remote, where packs do not reach. Live among the animals I can speak with. It would be lonely, but at least it would be my choice." "You would give up connection with your own kind?" "My own kind gave up on me long ago," Nessa replied, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "The only kindness I have known has come from creatures that cannot speak human words. So yes, I would give up connection with wolves if the alternative is being used and manipulated." Shade moved then, rising from where the wolf had been lying and padding over to Nessa. The massive head bumped against her hip, and she heard Shade's voice in her mind, clearer than any animal she had ever communicated with before. "Not alone anymore. Found you. Pack now." Tears sprang to Nessa's eyes before she could stop them. It was such a simple statement, but it carried weight and warmth and a promise of belonging she had never expected to feel. "Shade thinks you are Pack," Demon said quietly, and she realized he could sense some of what was passing between her and his wolf. "That is not a designation my wolf gives lightly. In 15 years, Shade has accepted perhaps a dozen wolves as true Pack. You have known each other for a handful of hours, and already Shade considers you family. That should not be possible." "Maybe it is not about time," Nessa suggested, wiping away a tear before it could fall. "Maybe it is about recognition. Maybe Shade sees something in me that resonates with something in you. Maybe that is what Beast speakers do. Recognize the bonds that exist between souls. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming?" Demon stared at her for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face as if trying to read her soul. "You believe in soul bonds. I believe that connections exist that we cannot fully explain," Nessa replied. "I have spent my whole life feeling those connections with animals. Why would it be so strange for such connections to exist between wolves as well? Because acknowledging soul bonds means acknowledging fate," Demon said. "And I have never been comfortable with the idea that my choices are predetermined, that some cosmic force decides who I should care about and who I should dismiss." "That is not what I mean," Nessa clarified. "Soul bonds do not remove choice. They simply reveal compatibility, possibility. What you do with that revelation is still your decision." Demon laughed, a short, sharp sound that held little humor. "You speak like someone who has spent years thinking about these concepts. I thought you were a servant who talked to birds, not a philosopher. When you are alone as much as I have been, you have a lot of time to think," Nessa said. "About existence, about purpose, about why some wolves seem to have everything while others have nothing. I may not have formal education, but I have educated myself through observation and reflection." "Dangerous," Demon repeated, but this time there was definite approval in his tone. "You are far more dangerous than anyone realizes." They walked in silence for a while longer, Shade moving between them like a living bridge. The gardens gave way to wilder grounds, trees and underbrush that reminded Nessa of the forests where she had spent so much of her time. A fox appeared on the path ahead, its eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Young speaker," it greeted her. "The forest creatures have been discussing you. They say you have found Pack with the great wolves. Is this true?" "Perhaps," Nessa replied aloud, forgetting for a moment that Demon was listening. "It is too early to know for certain." The fox looked at Demon with what could only be described as suspicion. This one smells of power and blood. Be careful, young speaker. Powerful wolves are dangerous even to those they claim to protect. I will be careful, Nessa assured the fox. Thank you for your concern. The fox nodded and disappeared into the underbrush. Demon watched the entire exchange with fascination. You truly do speak with them. It is not metaphorical or symbolic. You have actual conversations with animals. Yes, Nessa confirmed, though the level of complexity varies. Foxes and corvids are remarkably intelligent. They can communicate abstract concepts, warnings, even gossip. Insects are more basic, mostly feelings and simple information. But all of them can communicate if you know how to listen. Show me, Demon commanded. Prove that you can do more than simply talk to creatures. Prove that you can call them, that they will respond to you. It was another test. Nessa understood that. He needed to know the extent of her abilities, needed to determine if she was truly as unique as she claimed, or if this was somehow an elaborate deception. She closed her eyes and reached out with that part of her that had always existed, but that she was only now beginning to understand. She did not use words, did not make sounds. She simply projected feelings, thoughts, a sense of invitation and welcome that rippled outward like waves on a pond. The response was immediate. Birds began landing in the trees around them, dozens of them, different species that would normally never gather together. Rabbits emerged from burrows, their noses twitching. A deer stepped carefully through the underbrush, its large eyes wary but curious. Even insects began to gather, fireflies and moths creating patterns of light in the darkness. Within minutes, they were surrounded by creatures, all of them focused on Nessa, all of them responding to her call. Remarkable, Demon breathed. I have seen alphas command packs of hundreds. I have seen warriors inspire loyalty through strength and dominance. But I have never seen anything like this. They come because they choose to, Nessa explained. Not because I force them. I simply showed them that I am safe, that I understand them, that I mean no harm. They respond to that invitation, because so few beings ever extend it to them. She released the call, sending feelings of gratitude and dismissal, and slowly the creatures dispersed, returning to their normal activities. But she noticed that several birds remained, perched in trees nearby, as if standing guard. How do you do it? Demon asked. What is the mechanism? Is it chemical, like scent? Is it magical? Is it something in your bloodline that allows you to access a frequency others cannot? Perceive? I do not know, Nessa admitted. I have never had anyone to teach me. I have never met another beast speaker. All I know is that when I focus on a creature, I can sense its mind, its emotions, its needs. And when I project back, they understand me. It is as natural as breathing. Demon was silent for a long moment, processing what he had witnessed. Finally, he spoke, his voice thoughtful. You said earlier that you would use your gift to help wolves and other creatures coexist more peacefully. That is an admirable goal. But have you considered that your gift could be used for much more than that? You could be an intelligence gatherer beyond compare. Birds could tell you what enemies are planning. Forest creatures could warn of approaching dangers. You could know everything that happens in a territory simply by asking the animals who live there. I could, Nessa agreed. But should I? Just because I can do something does not mean I should. Using animals as spies feels wrong, like a violation of the trust they place in me when they share their thoughts. Even if that information could save lives, even if knowing what an enemy plans could prevent war, there are always justifications for using power, Nessa replied. Always reasons why this time it is necessary, why the ends justify the means. But I have seen what happens when wolves believe they are entitled to use those weaker than themselves. I refuse to become that kind of person, even with good intentions. Demon studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she held his gaze. You are either incredibly principled or incredibly naive, he said finally. I have not decided which. Perhaps both, Nessa suggested. Perhaps that is the blessing and curse of being a beast speaker. We see the connections between all living things, and that makes it harder to justify causing harm even for strategic gain. They turned back toward the pack house, the moon illuminating their path. Nessa felt exhausted, the emotional weight of the day finally catching up with her. So much had changed. So much had been revealed. Her entire identity had shifted from worthless servant to rare bloodline in a matter of hours. She did not know how to process it all. As they approached the entrance where Lady Helena waited to escort Nessa to her quarters, Demon stopped her with a hand on her arm. Tomorrow, the real gathering begins. Treaties will be discussed. Territories will be negotiated. Wolves will position themselves for advantage. It will be brutal and exhausting, even for those experienced in pack politics. But I want you there. I want you observing, listening to what the animals in and around the pack house can tell you about the alphas and their entourages. Will you do that? You want me to spy for you? Nessa said flatly. Even after I just explained why I am uncomfortable with that. I want you to keep me informed of anything that might threaten the peace. Of this gathering, Demon corrected. There is a difference between using animals to spy on enemies and asking them to warn of genuine dangers. If an alpha is planning betrayal, if someone intends violence, would you not want to know? Would you not want to prevent bloodshed if you could? Put that way, Nessa could not argue. I will listen, she agreed. And if I learn of genuine threats to peace or safety, I will tell you. But I will not report casual gossip or private conversations that pose no danger. Fair enough, Demon said. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be challenging for both of us. Lady Helena led Nessa back to her quarters, chattering about the success of the feast and how well Nessa had comported herself. But Nessa barely heard the words. Her mind was spinning with everything that had happened, everything she had learned. She was a beast speaker. She had value. She had abilities that made her unique in the entire werewolf world. And the Alpha King himself had taken an interest in her, though she still could not determine if that interest was protective or predatory. As she lay in the unfamiliar luxury of a real bed, staring at the ceiling, she felt that connection to Shade pulse in her chest, like a second heartbeat. The wolf was sleeping. She could sense that. But even in sleep, Shade remained aware of her, connected to her in ways she did not fully understand. She thought about what the fox had said. Powerful wolves are dangerous even to those they claim to protect. It was true. Demon was dangerous. He was powerful and strategic, and accustomed to using every resource at his disposal to maintain his position. She would be a fool to trust him completely, to assume that his protection came without strings attached. But she would also be a fool to reject the opportunity he represented. For the first time in her life, someone saw value in her. Someone was willing to protect her, to give her resources and respect. Even if his motivations were partly selfish, partly strategic, that was still more than she had ever received before. The question was whether she could navigate this new world without losing herself in the process. Whether she could maintain her principles while also accepting the advantages that came with Demon's protection. Whether she could be valuable without becoming a tool. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, her dreams were filled with amber eyes and black fur, with the sensation of running through forests she had never seen, with voices that spoke without words and connections that transcended the boundaries between species. Somewhere in those dreams, she heard Shade's voice again, clear and certain. Not alone. Not anymore. Found pack. Found purpose. Found home. And in the morning, when she woke to sunlight streaming through windows and the sound of birds singing outside, Nessa allowed herself to hope that perhaps, finally, those words might be true. The first full day of the gathering dawned clear and bright, though Nessa could sense tension in the air that had nothing to do with the weather. Lady Helena arrived early with breakfast and another elaborate gown, this one deep emerald green that brought out the unusual color of Nessa's eyes. Today will be intense, Helena warned as she helped Nessa dress. The alphas will present their territorial concerns and petitions. There will be arguments, possibly threats. Your job is to observe and remain calm no matter what happens. Can you do that? I have sat through years of abuse without reacting, Nessa replied. I think I can handle political arguments. Helena smiled approvingly. Good. But remember, you are not a servant anymore. You represent the Alpha King's interests now. How you conduct yourself reflects on him. No looking at the floor. No hunching your shoulders. You are Beast Speaker Nessa Thornwood, descended from a legendary bloodline. Act like it. It was easier said than done, but Nessa tried to internalize the advice as Helena led her to the council chamber where the day's negotiations would take place. The room was circular, with tiered seating arranged so that all alphas could see each other. Demon's chair sat at the highest point, emphasizing his position as Alpha King. Nessa was directed to a smaller chair just behind and to the left of his position, a clear indication that she was part of his inner circle. The other alphas filed in with their advisors, each one taking their assigned position. Nessa watched them, carefully, noting the dynamics between various groups. Some alphas sat in clusters, clearly allied. Others sat alone, isolated by choice or circumstance. And throughout the room, she could feel the wolves beneath the human skins, dominant and aggressive, all of them barely restrained by civilization and protocol. Demon entered last, as was his right as king. He wore simple but elegant clothing, black as always, with only a silver chain of office to denote his rank. Shade walked at his side and Nessa felt the now familiar pull of connection as the wolf's eyes found hers immediately. Honored alphas, Demon began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. We begin today the work of the gathering. Over the next several days, we will address territorial disputes, discuss resource allocation, and make decisions that will guide our packs for the next century. I expect all disagreements to be handled with respect and dignity. I expect all alphas to remember that we are stronger together than we are divided, and I expect everyone present to honor the ancient laws that govern this sacred gathering. He paused, letting his words sink in. Now, who wishes to present first? Alpha Reed stood immediately, his expression carefully neutral. Your Majesty, if I may, I would like to address a concern that affects multiple territories. The human expansion into the northern forests has disrupted migration patterns for prey animals. This has created tension between packs as we compete for diminishing resources. I propose we discuss a coordinated approach to managing human encroachment. It was a smart opening. By framing the issue as affecting multiple packs, Reed made himself look like a leader thinking of the greater good rather than just his own territory. Several alphas nodded in agreement, and discussion began about how to handle the human problem without exposing the existence of werewolves to the wider human population. Nessa listened carefully, but she also extended her awareness beyond the room. She could sense birds in the rafters, mice in the walls, insects in the corners. All of them were experiencing the emotions and tensions of the wolves below them. All of them were agitated by the dominant energies filling the space, and some of them had information to share. A crow in the corner of the room had been present since before the alphas arrived, and it had been listening to conversations. Nessa carefully, subtly, made contact with the bird's mind. What have you heard, little brother? The crow responded immediately, pleased to be acknowledged. The silver-haired female wolf, it said, referring to Alpha Marissa, spoke with two others before entering. They plan to challenge the Alpha King's authority on resource distribution. They believe he favors the northern packs over the southern territories. Nessa filed that information away, watching Alpha Marissa carefully. The woman sat quietly now, listening to the discussion about human encroachment. But Nessa could see calculation in her eyes. The debate continued for over an hour, with various alphas suggesting different approaches. Some wanted to use their influence in human government to protect forest lands. Others suggested simply eliminating humans who ventured too far into pack territories. Demon moderated carefully, steering the discussion toward practical solutions, while shutting down suggestions that would expose their kind to human attention. Finally, Alpha Marissa stood. Your Majesty, While I appreciate the discussion about human encroachment, I believe we are avoiding a more fundamental issue. The distribution of territories itself is outdated and unfair. The northern packs control vast forests and resources, while southern packs are crowded into smaller territories with fewer prey animals. I propose a redistribution of territorial boundaries to create more equitable conditions. The room erupted into immediate argument. Northern alphas shouted their opposition, while southern alphas voiced support. Demon raised his hand, and slowly silence fell, though tension remained thick in the air. Alpha Marissa, Demon said carefully. The current territorial boundaries were established over 2 centuries ago through treaties that were agreed upon by all parties. Are you suggesting we discard centuries of precedent? I am suggesting that circumstances change, Marissa replied smoothly. What worked 200 years ago may not work now. Our populations have grown. Human expansion has reduced available territories. If we do not adapt, we will find ourselves in constant conflict over diminishing resources. And who decides which territories are redistributed? Asked Alpha Constantine, his voice heavy with skepticism. Who determines which packs give up land they have held for generations? I suspect, Alpha Marissa, that any redistribution you propose would favor your allies while disadvantaging those who oppose you. That is an insulting accusation, Marissa snapped. I am trying to address a genuine problem, not grab territory for myself. Are you? Constantine shot back. Because from where I sit, this looks like a naked power play disguised as concern for fairness. The argument escalated, with more alphas joining on either side. Nessa felt the tension building, felt the wolves getting closer to the surface. In another moment, this could turn violent, could destroy the entire purpose of the gathering. She heard Shade growl low in his throat, sensing the danger. And then she felt it. A subtle wrongness in the air, a sense of approaching threat that made every animal in the vicinity go silent with fear. She reached out with her gift, searching for the source, and found it. Rats in the walls, dozens of them, all moving with unnatural coordination toward the council chamber. And they were carrying something. Sickness, disease. Someone had deliberately infected them and was driving them toward the gathered alphas. Your Majesty, Nessa said urgently, standing without thinking about protocol. We need to evacuate this room immediately. Every eye in the chamber turned to her, surprise and irritation evident on most faces. But Demon did not hesitate. Why? He asked simply. Disease, Nessa said. In the walls, dozens of infected rats being driven toward this location. I do not know what the sickness is, but the intent is clear. Someone is trying to sicken or kill the alphas gathered here. For a moment, no one moved. Then chaos erupted as alphas surged to their feet, some moving toward the exits, others demanding to know more. Everyone remain calm, Demon commanded, his voice cutting through the panic with pure dominance. Exit in an orderly fashion. Beta Marcus, secure alternative location for the council. Lady Helena, ensure the routes are clear. Move now. The alphas filed out quickly, but without the stampede that might have caused injury. Demon remained until everyone else had. Exited, Shade at his side, and Nessa standing frozen, still connected to the rats in the walls. She could feel their confusion, their distress. They did not want to be here, did not want to be doing this. They were being compelled by something she could not quite identify. Can you stop them? Demon asked, his attention fully on her. Can you turn them away from us? Nessa focused everything she had on the rats, pushing past whatever was compelling them, trying to reach the creatures themselves, rather than the unnatural force driving them forward. It was like pushing through thick mud, difficult and exhausting. But slowly she made progress. I am trying, she said through gritted teeth. Whatever is controlling them is strong. It is not natural. Someone is using magic or some other force I do not recognize. Keep trying, Demon ordered. I will find the source. He moved with terrifying speed toward one of the walls where Nessa sensed the largest concentration of rats. Shade followed, and together they tore through wood and plaster, exposing the space behind. The rats were there, dozens of them, their eyes glazed with that unnatural compulsion. But behind them, barely visible in the shadows, was a small object pulsing with dark energy. Demon reached for it without hesitation, his hand closing around the object. The moment he touched it, the compulsion broke, and the rats scattered, fleeing in terror now that they were free of the control. Demon pulled the object into the light. It was a carved stone, small enough to fit in his palm, covered in symbols Nessa did not recognize. But she could feel the wrongness radiating from it, could sense the dark intent that had been woven into its creation. Blood magic, Demon said quietly, his voice deadly. Someone used blood magic to create a compulsion powerful enough to override the natural instincts of dozens of creatures. Someone brought this into my gathering with the intent to harm or kill. He turned to face the assembled alphas who had gathered in the hallway, watching the scene with a mixture of fear and anger. "Who brought this into my territory?" he demanded. "Who dares use forbidden magic in a sacred gathering?" Silence answered him. Every alpha looked either shocked or confused. If any of them knew about the stone, they were hiding it well. Beta Marcus appeared, his expression grim. "Your Majesty, we found 2 more of these stones in other parts of the building. Someone planted them throughout the pack house. If Miss Thornwood had not detected the threat, we would all have been exposed to whatever disease those creatures were carrying." Demon's eyes blazed with gold, his wolf rising to the surface with barely controlled fury. "This is an act of war, an attack on the gathering itself. I want every square inch of this territory searched. I want every wolf present accounted for and questioned. And I want whoever did this found and brought before me. Now." Alphas scattered to organize search parties and check their own people. Nessa stood in the hallway, suddenly feeling very small and very exposed. She had just prevented a major attack on the gathered alphas, had used her gift to save potentially hundreds of lives. But she had also painted a target on her back. Whoever had planted those stones now knew that she could detect and interfere with their plans. "You saved us," Demon said quietly, turning his attention back to her. "How did you know?" "The animals," Nessa explained. "They went silent all at once, that specific kind of silence that comes before a predator attacks. And then I sensed the rats, felt the wrongness in them. I have never felt anything like that compulsion before. It was like someone had reached into their minds and simply took control, overriding everything that makes them who they are." "Could you do that?" Demon asked. "Could you take control of creatures the way whoever created those stones did?" "No," Nessa said firmly, "and I would not even if I could. That is not communication. That is slavery. That is forcing your will onto another being without their consent. It is exactly the kind of power I never want to possess." Demon studied her for a long moment. "Good. Because if you had said yes, if you had shown any interest in that kind of control, I would have had to reconsider our arrangement. The ability to communicate with creatures is valuable. The ability to enslave them is dangerous." He gestured toward the destroyed wall and the scattered stone fragments. This attack was sophisticated and well planned. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. They knew the layout of the pack house. They knew where to place the stones for maximum effect. And they knew that normal wolves would not detect the threat until it was too late. The question is why? To disrupt the gathering, Beta Marcus suggested. To throw everything into chaos and prevent the alphas from reaching agreements. Or to eliminate specific targets, Demon countered. If we had been infected with whatever disease those rats carried, some of us might have died. Others would have been weakened. Territory disputes could have been settled through illness rather than negotiation. It is efficient, in a horrifying way. A mouse emerged from a crack in the baseboard, its tiny nose twitching nervously. Nessa made contact with its mind, feeling its fear and confusion. "Little sister," she said aloud, kneeling down to the mouses. "Level. You live in these walls. Have you seen who placed the dark stones? The mouse chittered, its thoughts coming through in flashes of image and sensation. Bad wolf, smell of rot and anger, place stones in dark times when others sleep. Many stones, hidden everywhere. Can you show me where the other stones are? Nessa asked gently. Can you lead us to them? The mouse hesitated, fear warring with the desire to help. Nessa projected feelings of safety and gratitude, promised that no harm would come to it. Finally, the mouse agreed. Your Majesty, Nessa said, standing. This mouse knows where more stones are hidden. It can lead us to them if we move quickly and quietly. Can it identify who placed them? Demon asked. It says a wolf, but the description is vague. Bad smell, anger, darkness. That could be anyone, especially if they used magic to disguise themselves or cloud the memories of witnesses. Then we find the stones first, Demon decided. Eliminate the immediate threat. Then we identify the traitor. They moved through the pack house like ghosts, following the mouse as it led them to hidden stones. They found them in ventilation shafts, behind loose stones and walls, tucked into the corners of supply closets. Each one pulsed with that same dark energy, each one designed to compel nearby creatures toward the gathered alphas. By the time they finished, they had collected 13 stones in total. 13 points of attack, any one of which could have succeeded if Nessa had not detected the threat. Whoever did this was thorough, Beta Marcus observed. They wanted to make sure at least one attack succeeded, which means they were either very afraid of failure or very committed to causing maximum damage. Demon replied. He looked at the collection of stones they had gathered, his expression dark. These need to be destroyed, but carefully. Blood magic is volatile. If we simply smash them, the energy could backlash and harm anyone nearby. The ravens might know how to safely dispose of blood magic, Nessa suggested. They remember old things, old knowledge that wolves have forgotten. If you would allow me, I could ask them. Demon nodded. Do it, but be quick. I want these things gone before nightfall. Nessa stepped out into the gardens and reached out with her gift, calling to the corvids that lived in the surrounding forests. They came quickly, dozens of them, crows and ravens both, landing in trees and on walls to listen to what she needed. Brothers and sisters of the Black Wings, she said, speaking aloud so Demon could hear as well. I need your wisdom. How does one safely destroy objects corrupted by blood magic? The ravens conferred among themselves, their harsh calls creating a strange symphony. Finally, the eldest among them, a massive raven with silver streaking through its black feathers, spoke directly to Nessa's mind. Fire and salt and running water, it said. Burn them with white ashwood, surround the fire with a circle of pure salt, and let the ashes wash away in a natural stream. The earth will cleanse the corruption. But be warned, young speaker. Whoever created these objects has power and knowledge that should not exist. They have walked the dark paths and made bargains with things that should remain forgotten. You have made an enemy today, a dangerous one. I understand, Nessa replied. Thank you for your wisdom. She relayed the instructions to Demon, who immediately set about gathering the necessary materials. Within an hour, they had created a ceremonial fire in a clearing by the stream that ran through Packlands. The 13 stones were placed in the flames surrounded by a perfect circle of salt, and they watched as the dark energy burned away, the stones cracking and crumbling to ash. As the ashes washed away downstream, Nessa felt a sense of relief. The immediate danger was gone, but the raven's warning echoed in her mind. You have made an enemy today. A dangerous one? That evening, the Alphas reconvened in a different location, this time with extensive security measures in place. The mood was grim, the earlier political maneuvering forgotten in the face of the attack they had all just survived. Demon stood before them, his presence commanding absolute attention. Someone brought blood magic into this gathering, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. Someone planted cursed stones throughout Packlands with the intent to harm or kill. This is a violation of every law we hold sacred. This is an attack not on individual alphas, but on our entire society, on the very concept of peaceful assembly. He paused, letting his words sink in. I am offering a choice to whoever is responsible. Confess now, face judgment, and I will grant mercy in the form of a quick death. Or hide your guilt, and when I find you, because I will find you, the punishment will be far more severe. Silence. No one moved. No one spoke. If the guilty party was present, they were not confessing. Very well, Demon said coldly. Then we proceed with investigation. Every wolf present will submit to questioning. Every belongings will be searched. Every connection to blood magic practitioners will be examined. And when I find the traitor, when I discover who dared threaten the peace of this gathering, they will wish they had taken the option of mercy. He dismissed the assembly, and slowly the alphas filed out, muttering among themselves. Nessa saw fear in many eyes, but also determination. Whoever was responsible had united the alphas in a way political speeches never could. They were angry. They were threatened. And they wanted justice. As Nessa made her way back to her quarters, exhausted from the day's events, she felt a presence behind her. She turned to find Cassandra blocking her path, her beautiful face twisted with hatred. This is your fault, Cassandra hissed. You brought chaos with you. You corrupted the Alpha King's wolf. You disrupted the gathering with your ridiculous claims about rats. Everything was fine before you appeared. Everything was not fine, Nessa replied, too tired to be diplomatic. Someone planted those stones before I ever sat at the high table. Someone planned this attack before anyone knew I existed. I just happened to be able to detect it. Convenient, Cassandra sneered. You suddenly have this miraculous gift that makes you valuable to the Alpha King. You detect a threat that no one else saw. You become the hero. Tell me, how much did you pay the blood magic practitioner to plant those stones so you could look good finding them? The accusation was so absurd that for a moment, Nessa could only stare. Then anger, hot and fierce, surged through her. I risked my life today detecting those stones. If I had been wrong, if they had been harmless, I would have looked like a fool in front of every alpha present. If I had been too slow, everyone in that chamber could have been infected with disease. Do not stand there and accuse me of engineering something that could have killed us all. You are a liar and a manipulator, Cassandra spat. And when the Alpha King finally sees through your deceptions, when he realizes you are playing him, I will be there to watch your downfall, and I will enjoy every moment of it. Before Nessa could respond, Shade appeared seemingly from nowhere, the massive wolf positioning itself between Nessa and Cassandra. The growl that rumbled from Shade's chest was unlike anything Nessa had heard before, a sound of pure threat and promised violence. Cassandra went pale, stumbling backward. Control your beast, she demanded, but her voice shook. Shade does not belong to me, Nessa said quietly. Shade belongs to the Alpha King, and if the wolf chooses to protect me, that is between you and his majesty. Cassandra fled, and Nessa felt herself shaking with delayed reaction. The confrontation had been brief, but intense, and she realized how much danger she was actually in. Cassandra was an Alpha's daughter, powerful and connected, and she clearly saw Nessa as a threat to be eliminated. Shade pressed against her side, and she felt the wolf's concern through their bond. Safe now. Protected. Pack protects pack. Thank you, Nessa whispered, running her fingers through the soft fur. But you should return to Demon. He will be looking for you. No. Stay with you tonight. Danger still near. Pack does not leave pack alone when enemies hunt. The determination in the wolf's voice was absolute. Shade would not be moved, would not leave her unprotected. Nessa should have been uncomfortable with that, should have insisted that Shade return to its human. But instead, she felt only relief and gratitude. She was not alone. For the first time in her life, she was truly not alone. They walked together to her quarters, and Shade settled on the rug beside her bed. those amber eyes watching the door with vigilant intensity. Nessa lay down, but did not sleep immediately. Instead, she stared at the ceiling and thought about everything that had happened. She had discovered her heritage. She had been recognized and valued. She had saved lives. She had made enemies. And through it all, she had felt the constant presence of the bond connecting her to Shade, and through Shade, to Demon himself. It was not romantic. It was not possessive. But it was deep and real and undeniable. She did not understand it fully, did not know what it meant, or where it would lead. But she knew with absolute certainty that her life would never be the same. She was a beast speaker. She was valuable. She was protected. She was Pack. And tomorrow she would face whatever came next with her head held high, refusing to be invisible anymore, refusing to apologize for existing. Tomorrow, she would continue learning what it meant to be Nessa Thornwood, heir to an ancient bloodline, connected to creatures both mundane and magical. Tomorrow, she would discover what it meant to belong. But tonight, she slept with a massive wolf guarding her door, and for the first time in memory, she felt completely safe.